see here on the slides. Marxist, terrorist, or anti-apartheid revolutionary. What names come to your mind when you read those 2 lines, or 3 lines, or 4 lines? Give me one name.
Mandela.
Nalson Mandela. Give me another name.
Cuba, Castro.
Castro. Is third or too much? I guess. For some reason, I was thinking I'll hear Martin Luther King, but I don't think he can be classified as a terrorist. He was peace-loving, right?
He was peace-loving.
That is correct. Okay. All right, so I am talking about no one else but Nelson Mandela. And the reason I picked this topic is because he was all over the news. I have been hearing about him the last decade or so, and his life just fascinated me. And I thought, well, that's a good opportunity to learn more about him if I decide to give a presentation or a speech about it. So it's to benefit myself and to share my findings with you people. So as you can see, if you look at just this, or at least when I looked at this picture, I did not know that this is Nelson Mandela. I can only recognize him in that kind of a picture. So it was just interesting to see his youth pictures. And most of my research is using Wikipedia. So I don't know if you think that credible or not. I think it's okay. So that's what I use. Before I begin, I want to clarify something. Look at this. This is what a tweet a friend of mine sent me by Morgan Friedman, who played Nelson Mandela in different movies. He's just clarifying that it's not him who died a couple of days ago, it's really the leader. All right, so who was Nelson Mandela? He was a South African. He was an anti-apartheid revolutionary, a politician, a philanthropist. He received the Nobel Prize for Peace, and he served as the president of South Africa from 1994 to 1999. What will I talk about? I'll talk about his life from start to end, briefly major events in his life, his achievements, the role of USA and Cuba. That's something that I learned and found interesting, so I'll briefly touch on that. There's a lot of, it's basically a political thing, so there's a lot of disagreement on exactly what happened, but I'll just touch on that. And what we can learn from his life, that's really important. And I have this, so I don't need to bend down and click it. Thank you. All right, going back. He was born in 1918. He joined the African National Congress, which was a political party running in South Africa. He was sent to the prison in 1962. He spent 25 years, I think 25, I'm not missing, I'll have that number later on. And then he was released from the prison. He ended the apartheid in South Africa and became the president, and then he passed away a couple of days ago at the age of 95, I think. This is a picture from his first wedding. He was married 3 times. This is from his first wedding. He was born in a Tumba royal family, and he went to Fort Hare University, not to be confused with Fort Wayne University, and the University of
Witwatersrand.
Witwatersrand,
Yes.
where he studied law, so he was a lawyer by profession. When he was around 30 years old, he became active in politics. He joined the African National Congress, and he fought for equal rights for blacks and whites, which were not given equal rights. And he was the founding member of the Youth League. After his party came to power, he rose to prominence and led the Defiance campaign in 1952. Questions, comments so far?
What's the Defiance campaign?
That is, to my understanding, is a campaign where they started to be obstructionist and defied rules where, for example, different restrooms were allocated for blacks and whites. They said we should not be segregated that way. So they defied those orders and tried to use things that blacks were not supposed to use, and that caused problems.
Thank you.
You're welcome. As I said, he was a lawyer by training and initially believed in nonviolence, peaceful struggle, but later his ideas changed a little bit, and he was arrested and put in jail for treason charges. And as I said, he was initially committed to nonviolent, but then changed his mind to some extent to be an obstructionist. He was not violent, but he did start creating some trouble for the government. So as part of his violent struggle, what they call it, he created this organization, and in association with South African Communist Party, leading a sabotage campaign against the government. In 1962, he was arrested, convicted of conspiracy to overthrow the state, and was sent to prison in a very famous trial, and was denounced as a Marxist terrorist by his critics. So that's where I got that title from. These are some pictures of the house that he was arrested from. The top part is the room where he was hiding when he was arrested, and the bottom picture shows the house he used to live in, which is now considered a monument. He did accept or admitted that he tried to sabotage the government, but he denied that he ever agreed to initiate a guerrilla war against the government. That's what his political view was. Some say that American CIA, which was working closely with the South African government at that time, since South Africa was a US ally, did play some role in his arrest. But Nelson Mandela himself, in his autobiography, refuted that, and he said he does not think there's a merit to it. So I found that interesting. He spent 27 years in prison, and that's a long time. And when I just think about that, spending 27 years in a prison cell that looks something like this, and doing hard labor for a lawyer, for a visionary person, it means a lot. It's a big sacrifice, I would say that. So he spent 27 years, and while on trial, he made a lot of very passionate speeches about the equal rights of blacks with whites. And he used his trial, since he was a lawyer by training, so he represented himself. And he used those trials not as much to defend himself, but to try to spread the message of equal rights for everybody. And I found that very fascinating. He was less concerned about what's going to happen to him, and more concerned to use that opportunity to speak and spread the message. So in that respect, I guess he was a toastmaster. Right.
There we go.
And when he was in prison, he took admission in the London University in the law school. So he became a student through correspondence. And that also provided him a way to reach out to the world and to spread the message. And when he was in the prison, the University of London elected him to be the president of the university, and that really helped him a lot in spreading his message and cause. And there was a movement going on at that time for his freedom, for his independence. Another thing I learned about Cuba's role in his release. Cuba helped South Africa a lot, since Cuba was more aligned with the Russian side of the Cold War, and US was more aligned with the African government. So Cuba tried and helped African nations fight against South African armies in the neighboring countries like Angola, and defeated the South African army, which weakened the South African grip on power, and that helped Nelson Mandela to achieve his objectives. He was finally released from the prison after a lot of pressure on the government. In 1990, he was out, and he started negotiations with the president, F.W.D. Clark, which this is the picture where he's talking and negotiating with the current ruler at that time. And in 1994, he negotiated a multiracial elections in South Africa for the first time, and that's where he became the president of South Africa, the first black president of South Africa. He created the Truth and Reconciliation Commission to investigate past human rights abuses. He was a very pleasant person, and he had a lot of friends around the world, including a picture here of President Bill Clinton, President George W. Bush, and he was very much liked and loved throughout the world for not only his cause and his struggle, but also his personality. He was a very loving, kind, and gentle leader of the world. As president, he encouraged land reform. So there's a lot of problem in South Africa where land was owned by whites and blacks were only allowed to work. So he encouraged land reform, spreading it among all people, and expanded healthcare services for South Africa. Internationally, he acted as a mediator in the Pan Am Flight 103 bombing trial. He refused to run for a second term. So when he was the president, he just stayed for one term, and he stepped down to ensure a peaceful transition of government, since that was a concern at that time, that Mandela is so powerful that he will somehow overshadow and overpower the legal system of the country, and nobody will challenge him. So he intentionally stepped down, and his vice president then ran, and he won the president. So he became the president. And when he went into retirement, he focused a lot on charity and worked a lot towards the HIV and AIDS. He received a lot of honors, Nobel Prize, US Presidential Medal of Honor, Soviet Order of Lenin, and Bharat Ratna from India. He's considered father of the nation, highly respected in South Africa. There are two of his quotes. He believed strongly in power of education and the power of love. And that's really what inspires me towards him. My favorite quote about him or from him is, as I walked out of the door towards the gate from the prison, he's leaving the prison, that would lead to my freedom, I knew if I didn't leave my bitterness and hatred behind, I'll still be in prison. And that really moves me, that he spent 27 years and he's leaving that hatred behind. So that just moves me. And that's all. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Muzaffar. If I could have 1 minute on the time for evaluations, please.